Hey everybody, we got a fun one today as we do a close-up on the smoke box. Yeah, we're going to cover the value proposition tied to the smoke box. I'll share with you some low-cost upgrades I've put in place, and we'll cover some basics on temperature, smoke ranges, and of course how I use it, or how we've been able to, get some good stuff out of it. Also, I'm going to give you some examples and show you another take on some homemade sausage I did. Okay, let's get started with the beginning, assembly and packaging. So I got my smoke box with the dual fire bundle, and in this case, it showed up and went through it, and this was the unpackaging that I did, during the assembly video that I first published. Everything comes together well packaged, well protected. I had no issues with anything whatsoever in it. Okay. And it was pretty straightforward. However, you do need a friend. You need to get a friend to help you out with this. It's just because you got to reach in from two different angles or multiple angles to make some things happen. But this is literally a bolt-on solution. It's got the three racks that go into it, and this thing bolts on in place of the smokestack that's already there. So this makes it a great add-on for any Recteq model. Okay, now let's talk about gaskets. One of the things I noticed during the burn-in process was there was some smoke coming out between the body of the smoke box and the dual fire. I went ahead and put some gasket material, high temp gasket material around that junction, and that eased that. Likewise, I put some silicone foam tape in place around the door to keep smoke sealed in from there too. Basically, on the top rack, you're going to get 50 degrees less than whatever you have going on the indirect side. Subtract another 10 degrees, go down 60 degrees for the mid rack, go another 10 degrees down for the bottom rack. And that's what you tend to end up with. So what that means is, with a low of 180 on the indirect side, you have 130 on the top rack, 120 on the mid rack, and 110 on the bottom rack. Okay, and so that gives you a range to work with. If you're going to go any lower than that, you're probably going to need to turn off the indirect and go with a smoke tube inside the smoke box in order to get some true cold smoke activities going on in there. Okay, now the other side of that is you could also do the cold smoke with a smoke tube in the indirect side. However, the small volume in the smoke box, I believe, gives you a more concentrated smoke flavor. So keep that in mind. Okay, one obvious benefit is you can put just about anything in there, and you can use this thing as a rest area. I've put briskets in there, pork butts in there, cornbread as you see here, baked potatoes in there. It all serves well to rest things. Now, one of the core benefits I've come to appreciate about the smoke box is effectively the overall design of this really gives you concentrated smoke into that chamber. Okay, basically you've got two volumes that are being worked with. On the indirect side, that's where your smoke comes from and exhausts into the smoke box. And so effectively, because it's almost double, well, it's about 57% more in volume than the smoke box, you get a lot of smoke that focuses in and through there. This concentrated smoke really means that when you're cold smoking, warm smoking, or hot smoking, you really get some smoke flavor. And one of the primary uses for the smoke box is cold smoking. Now, this can be done by putting a smoke tube in the smoke box itself or in the indirect side. Now, one of the risks of putting a smoke tube inside the smoke box is you will raise the temperature. So you need to be cognizant of that. If it's very cold weather, then yeah, you're probably okay. Now, one of the upgrades I put in place is a new fan to manage convection. Why? Because it's important to manage your temperatures. Warm smoking is between 77 and 104 Fahrenheit. Hot smoke is 126 to 176 Fahrenheit. And I want to make sure that I keep my temperatures within the appropriate range based on where the recipe is calling for. In this case, the recipe is calling for fresh sausage. That's right. Following the Ched's principle in terms of ratios to try and replicate the Kreitz's sausage out of Lockhart that I love. In this instance, it is 9 parts brisket, ground up to 1 part pork. Now, in my case, I did have a challenge because there wasn't really any recipes out there, and what I dug up showed me a difference in terms of spice levels and everything else. But, tried to land in the middle, and I did follow most of the Chud's recommendations in terms of adding 10% wet, specifically the sausage maker binder to it at 4%. Came to later find out that Kreiz's recommends 3%. So next time I try this, I may go down just a little bit on the binder. But I will say this, I think I'm going to be a student of making sausage from Chud's for a while. Great layouts and recipes and descriptions on how to do it right. So day 2, here we go, whipping out the jerky gun and turning it into the sausage gun. Got the casing on there. One little tip that came out of the Chud's was basically twist one way and then the opposite, and that'll help keep your air bubbles out of the sausage, and that works well. So I had no issues with air bubbles in the sausage this go around. And then back in the fridge overnight. And this is because I'm following that 3-day process that the Meat Church guys laid out. That seems to work okay. So now we're going in and we're doing some cold smoke, but check out that new fan. Look at that smoke blowing out from under that fan. This is delivering the convection that I was looking for and giving me the even temperatures through and through. Now the fan I'm using is a DC brushless motor fan, so it's good for warm temperatures, and this one comes with a variable fan speed control, giving me even temps all the way through and through. In this case, held everything around 149 Fahrenheit. So yeah, definitely working as planned and keeping the convection and temperatures managed. And look at the color that came out on these guys. Just fantastic. And you know what? Smelled great too. So for the most part, I made a ton of this because everything went so fast the last time. So it's time to basically vacuum pack this up and put some of it in the freezer, and save it for later. But yeah, this was a really straightforward exercise, and as I do this, it's getting easier and easier. By now, the regulars have probably noticed that in addition to all this meat, I try to pair something sweet. And this week is Niki's Hook. Now, why Niki's Hook? Go ahead and hit the pause button. You can jot down this recipe. Well, when Niki was dating my father, she made this, and it was awesome. Now, the challenge was that she made it while she was dating my father. And it wasn't until 2 years after they were married, I noticed, hey, Dad, she quit making all of this. And we asked her why. Was this some kind of plan? And she said no, but I happen to think that it was her plan to kind of, get him hooked. Anyhow, cut up the apples, mix in the sugar, pretty straightforward stuff right there. And then what we're going to do is sprinkle over some cinnamon on top of this and let that marinate for a while. The crust is the main thing. This is like a shortbread, and this works out very, very well. Now I'm doubling the recipe, and so what I have in there is, and what you're seeing all the way through here is a doubling because the pan size I'm using is fairly large. But what you're going to want to do is, take the butter, take the sugar, take the extract, and so forth, and you're going to want to cream that up with your blender. And as you get this to a certain consistency where it is creamy, you're going to add the flour in, basically 1/2 at a time. Okay, this just keeps the dust level down and everything clean, but it also, I think, helps you mix things in a little bit better fashion. Now, once you get this all, creamed up and, formed into the dough, you're going to want to basically flour coat that pan that you're going to be doing, in my case, the cast iron here, and you're going to want to form a shell inside of that. So just press that in and get the edges the way you want it. And what I do is I tend to put a little lip on that shell because the custard filling, or the cream cheese filling rather, is going to ride up in that area. Okay, so let's talk about the filling. Mix up the eggs, the extract, and the sugar. Get that all in place. And yeah, I tend to go a little heavy on the vanilla. You probably have noticed that. But basically, we get this all, mixed up. And then what we're going to add to this is, because we're doubling it, cream cheese. And in my case, 2 things of cream cheese. Now, I tend to like to let that sit out and soften a little bit to make this part a little easier. But what you're going to do is blend this until you get it pretty smooth, okay? Now, once you have that pretty smooth, well, time to dump it into that shell that you made a little bit earlier. So basically, get that in there, as much of it as you can, and then we're going to layer those apples on top of it. Now, you can do this with pear or any other kind of fruit, okay? Apples was how Niki started to get my dad engaged, and so that's been kind of my tradition, but I have done this with pears, and it works out really well. Okay, then we're going to top that off with a little bit more cinnamon, and we're done. It's ready to go into the direct side at 450 for 10 minutes. Then we're going to drop that down to 400. We're going to do that for about 35 minutes plus. Okay, the way we know it's done is when it passes the jiggle test and that center has basically set. So basically shake it a little bit, just like that. If you don't see it jiggling right there in the center, then you're good to go. So basically pop that out, set it to the side, let it cool down to room temperature, and you can even refrigerate this and serve it chilled. It's great either way. And I will tell you, this is absolutely a crowd pleaser. You just can't help but enjoy this. Now, lots of ingredients, but it does come together well. Now let's get back to the value proposition. Effectively, the Dual Fire 1200 is highly versatile. 200 to 700 on the direct side, 180 to 700 on the indirect side. And you can sear, grill, bake, everything effectively. Flame kiss on that direct side. In the smoke box, you got low, warm, hot smoke capabilities, and that takes you from ambient up to 180. But what I tend to do is lightly smoke on the indirect and then sear on the direct afterwards, kind of a reverse sear. Now what I've been doing is smoking in the smoke box and then just bringing it to temperature in the indirect side. Tons of flexibility there. Then obviously I can plug anything I want in to the back of the controller. So in short, I'm using that smoke box quite a bit. It's a great complement to everything I've got going. And obviously my newest addition is the sear kit. And I gotta say, I'm starting to use it quite a bit too. Oh, where's that music coming from? It must be Zen time. Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about right there. And yeah, do me a favor, like and subscribe and give me some comments. Truly appreciate it.